You know that moment when you send a text and the other person leaves you on read, and suddenly your brain goes into full detective mode? You're replaying every word you typed, analyzing their tone from the last conversation, wondering if you said something wrong, questioning the entire friendship. All of this over a text message. That's not weakness. That's not stupidity. That is your brain doing exactly what it was built to do. And that's precisely the problem. Overthinking isn't a personality flaw. It isn't something wrong with you. In fact, the people who overthink the most are often the most intelligent, the most emotionally aware, and the ones who care the deepest. But caring deeply and thinking endlessly are two very different things. And somewhere along the way, your brain confused the two. Here's what's actually happening inside your mind. When you can't turn it off, your brain has a built-in threat detection system. Scientists call it the amygdala, and its entire job is to keep you alive. Back when humans were living in caves, this system was scanning the environment for lions, for rival tribes, for danger around every corner. It was brilliant. It saved lives. But here's the cruel irony. Your brain never got the update. It never learned the difference between a lion chasing you and a performance review coming up on Monday. To your nervous system, both feel exactly the same. The heart races, the stomach tightens, the mind starts spinning, and instead of running from a predator, you're lying in bed at 2 a.m. replaying a conversation from 3 years ago that literally no one else remembers. Psychologists call this pattern rumination, and rumination is different from thinking. Thinking moves forward. It solves. It decides. It creates. Rumination moves in circles. It revisits. It re-examines. It re-questions things that have already happened or that haven't happened yet. It's like being stuck in a mental loop where the exit sign keeps moving, and the more you try to force yourself to stop thinking about something, the more aggressively your brain brings it back. That's called the ironic process theory. The harder you try to suppress a thought, the louder it gets. Tell yourself right now, don't think about a pink elephant. What did you just think about? But why do some people overthink more than others? This is where it gets deeply personal. Research in psychology shows that chronic overthinkers often share a few common traits. First, they have a high need for certainty. The unknown feels physically uncomfortable to them, not just emotionally, but in their body. Uncertainty triggers anxiety, and their brain responds by trying to think its way to a guaranteed outcome. But life doesn't offer guarantees. So the brain keeps searching, keeps analyzing, keeps running scenarios, and never finds the certainty it's looking for because it doesn't exist. Second, many overthinkers have what's called a negativity bias on overdrive. Every human brain is wired to pay more attention to negative information than positive. Again, a survival mechanism. But in overthinkers, this bias is amplified. They can receive 9 compliments and 1 piece of criticism, and their mind will spend the next 72 hours dissecting the criticism while the compliments completely fade into the background. Third, and perhaps most importantly, many overthinkers have a deeply rooted fear of making the wrong choice. This fear often comes from early experiences, environments where mistakes had heavy consequences, where love felt conditional, where being wrong meant something bad would follow. So the brain learned to keep reviewing, keep checking, keep second-guessing, because stopping felt dangerous. Now here's what no one tells you about overthinking. It actually feels productive in the moment. Your brain releases a tiny hit of dopamine every time you analyze a situation, because analysis feels like control. You feel like you're doing something, like you're being responsible, like you're preparing, but you're not preparing. You're performing anxiety. There's a massive difference. Preparation leads to action. Overthinking leads to exhaustion, mental, emotional, and eventually physical. Studies have shown that chronic ruminators have significantly higher rates of depression, anxiety disorders, and even weakened immune systems. Your body doesn't know the difference between an imagined threat and a real one. Stress hormones flood your system either way. So what actually works? Not toxic positivity. not telling yourself to just relax or stop worrying, because if that worked, you would have done it already. What actually interrupts the overthinking loop is something psychologists call cognitive diffusion. Instead of trying to stop the thought or fight it or prove it wrong, you simply observe it from a distance. You say to yourself, I notice that I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail. Not, I'm going to fail. Not, I must not think that I'm going to fail. Just, I notice I'm having this thought. That tiny shift in language creates psychological distance between you and the thought. You stop being the thought and start being the observer of the thought. And when you're the observer, the thought loses its power over you. Another powerful approach is what researchers call the 5-5-5 rule. When a thought is spiraling, ask yourself, will this matter in 5 days? In 5 months? In 5 years? Most of what we torture ourselves over on a Tuesday afternoon becomes completely invisible by the following weekend. This isn't about dismissing your feelings. It's about giving your brain a more accurate sense of proportion, because anxiety distorts scale. It makes small things feel catastrophic and temporary things feel permanent. The most important thing to understand is this: you are not your thoughts. Your brain produces thousands of thoughts every single day, random, contradictory, sometimes completely irrational thoughts, and most of them mean nothing. A thought is not a fact. A thought is not a command. A thought is electrical activity moving through tissue. The meaning you give it is entirely within your power. Overthinkers are not broken. They are brains that learn to survive by staying alert. And now they need to learn slowly and with patience that the danger they're preparing for usually lives only in their mind. Your brain is not your enemy. It's just working with old software. And the good news is, software can be updated.